if you are currently suffering trying to make a new biosketch for the NIH using the new ScienCV system, first of all, sorry. I wish you weren't suffering the way that I hear a lot of people are, but this video is for you. I'm going to try to step through a couple of tips and tricks to maybe reduce the suffering at least a little bit, not eliminate it entirely. If you are not currently suffering through making a ScienCV, good for you, and just skip this video. It's not for you. So the big problems that I've been hearing about online with the new ScienCV system are predominantly around the website crashing and formatting issues. And we're going to go through those today and hopefully make that a little bit simpler. So let's take a look. So here I'm already signed into ScienCV. If you haven't signed into ScienCV before, you should probably do it sooner rather than later and start getting going. I have a previous biosketches that I had made under the other system, and I just have this one here that I started today using this new NIH Biographical Sketch Common Form, which is what you want to do. If you come here and you've got nothing, or you've got only old versions, my recommendation would be to start from a blank document. So when you say new document, here I'm going to make a computational focus. Some grants I have are more microbiome focused, some of them are more software focused. And if you're doing this, you want to select the NIH Biographical Sketch Common Form. If you put in one of the other versions, the old NIH BioSketch, for example, it'll come up with a little dialogue saying that that's no longer going to be supported. And if you haven't done this before, I highly recommend starting with a blank document. I've just heard a lot of horror stories about trying to use an external source like ORCID, for example. You can, in principle, link your ORCID ID in, and it should bring in stuff. My recommendation, unless you've got 40 years of history at the NIH and you've got a ton of stuff already in ORCID, I would not bother, personally. So instead, start with a blank document. I'm going to use an existing document in ScienCV because I mentioned I already had this microbiome focus document. And this is for primarily bringing in all of my sort of training stuff. So I've got my professional preparation, my training, I've got previous appointments, and all of that I think is mostly going to be common between the different things, and they're fairly easy to enter. So you just come in here, you say add appointment, you enter the information, save and add another entry, make sure you're saving pretty consistently. That didn't take me too much time. The products, which are mostly things like papers, I think for most folks, you can do preprints as well. In principle, you can do posters if they've got a DOI, but basically, again, here I would really recommend using ORCID, making sure your ORCID is up to date, and you can select your manuscripts from this record. And it's kind of nice because once you select 5, which is all you can enter for this section, it grays the other ones out, so it won't let you select more than that. So in the new version, unlike previous biosketches, you can only do a total of 10 products, 5 that are related to the proposal that you're currently entering, and 5 that are other things in your contributions to science. So you've really got to be a little bit selective. I'm not going to go through that because I think that's going to be personal to folks. The main thing that I want to talk about is the personal statement and your individual contributions to science, which a lot of folks have been having problems in terms of formatting. So to highlight this, I'll show you the this one contributions to science that I entered in here. What you'll see is that I entered, when I was editing this, I put in something called semantic line breaks. I'm not going to go into the details, but basically what's supposed to happen is that you're supposed to be able to use markdown formatting. I won't go into all the details of markdown, but one example is that for italics, you're supposed to be able to surround with underline or with underscores or single asterisks. You should be also able to bold things. For example, here, I'm going to put 2 stars around both statistical and machine learning models to highlight that computational bit. And I'm just going to do that for now. Save. And what you'll see when I export, I need to certify it. What should happen is that these underlines should be converted to italics and the stars should be converted to bold. And when I have a 2 line breaks here, that should be a paragraph break. And what you'll notice here in the PDF that gets exported is that none of that comes through. The markdown here, the line break that should be between paragraphs, they don't get converted. This doesn't get converted to bold. And this is despite the fact that there's this page here on the NLM website, ScienCV Wiki Help, that says explicitly it uses Markdown syntax and does not support HTML tags. Turns out that actually Markdown doesn't work and it only supports HTML tags, which is quite annoying. So if you are coming to this and you have a previous PDF or Word document, my first very strong recommendation is to copy that text into a plain text editor and edit there, not within the ScienCV system. This thing has been crashing for lots of people. It won't let you save if you go over the character limit. So make sure you're editing in an external software program first. Not Microsoft Word, not Google Docs. Those are rich text editors. You really want a plain text editor. If you already write code, if you have an IDE like RStudio or VS Code, then you can definitely use those to write your Markdown. If you don't, and you're more used to web interfaces, I really recommend hackmd.io. So if you go to hackmd.io, I'll put a link in the description. This is a place where you can edit Markdown and see a preview of what you're writing. So, for example, I'm going to type some italicized, not sure I'm spelling that right, text and some bold text. And you can even use keyboard shortcuts or these little editors up here. So if I do, let's see that if I do Control B here on my Linux machine, it automatically adds those stars for you, etc. As you see here, when I put a single space or a single return, it doesn't actually make any break in this line. I've changed this, so by default in HackMD, there's this option here, render new lines as hard breaks. By default, that's clicked on. That's unlike a lot of other Markdown, and I like having, these are called semantic line breaks. If you don't want that, then you can leave this on. And if you do want to have a line break that's not a paragraph break, so to see the difference here, I'll show you. This is a longer sentence, all work and no play, make researchers dull people. And I'll just add a couple lines like that so you can see this is a paragraph. Now, if I want to make a line break without a paragraph break, so here's a paragraph break, there's a whole line in between. If I just want a line break, I can add 2 spaces at the end of a sentence, and then you can see here I get no paragraph break, but I do get a line break. So I said earlier that you can't actually use Markdown in ScienCV. So why am I doing this in a Markdown editor? There's 2 reasons for that. So the first is that it's very easy to convert Markdown to HTML. And I find this kind of markup, these underlines and these stars, much easier to read than HTML. So I'm going to show you how to convert Markdown into HTML so that you can see what that looks like. But for the actual writing portion, I think it's much easier to do Markdown. The other reason is because hopefully at some point, ScienCV is going to get its act together and you will be able to use Markdown as intended. So this is sort of future-proofing it. It's easy to go from HTML back to Markdown too, but this is at least straightforward to do. So here I'm just at a website called markdowntohtml.com. pretty straightforward. There's lots of these online. There's software that does it. There's web pages that does it. As far as I can tell, this web page doesn't capture any information, although I don't know for sure. But what I'm going to show here is if I paste that text in here, what pops out here is HTML rendered. And so then I can copy this text directly into ScienCV and have all of the formatting that the Markdown is supposed to provide. You can also use software like Pandoc. I personally use an editor like this. This is just a plain text editor that I use from the command line. And what you'll see here is I have a bunch of individual components. I have a contribution to immunology, contribution to Julia development, microbiome brain interface, microbiome epidemiology, etc. Some different versions of my personal statement. And then I have a little script here that converts Markdown into HTML and does a little bit of formatting. The formatting it does in particular is converts. If you convert Markdown into HTML, there's two different ways to render bold and two different ways to render italics. So strong or B are both flags that become bold. So you can see here in this converter, it's converted these tags to strong. So it opens the thing and closes it. And the reason that I have this little script over here is because the text, the characters that you include in your markup are counted toward your character limit for ScienCV. And so using the short versions, I think, is much better. You can do a simple find and replace in almost any text editor. If you open up the HTML, this is a little script that does that automatically for me. You could also see that the apostrophe in I'm here got converted to an HTML version of that. So you just want to look out for stuff like that. In principle, ScienCV will render this correctly. So if I copy this over to my computational focus here, let's edit it, replace it with this text here, save, and then download the PDF. What you can see here is that it rendered this correctly. So you can use the HTML as it is, but there's a couple of tricks to sort of reduce the amount of characters that are being used, which can matter. So the tips are edit outside of ScienCV, and I mean this both for your initial import when you're coming from your other PDFs or Word documents or Google Drive documents. Bring those into a text editor first, but then if you need to make edits. So for example, if I come over here and I use my actual contribution to Julia development here. So I'm gonna come here and copy this over. Oh, this is the Markdown version. So let me grab the HTML version here. So grab all of this, paste it in here. What you'll see is that I'm quite a bit over the limit. I'm not going to go and edit this in ScienCV, both because, like I said, I can't even save this over here if I'm over the character limit, and also because if it crashes, I'm going to lose my work. So every time I make an edit, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to make the edit in the Markdown version, convert it to HTML, and then paste it back in here. It's a little bit of extra work, but I think it's going to save a lot of hassles in the end. So that's one thing, edit in your text editor at all times. The second piece is write in Markdown. So Markdown is more future-proof. It's easier to read as you're writing, easier to catch mistakes for that reason. And then the last thing is convert to HTML either with a script or using one of these online converters, and then look for places that you can save some space. So for example, use B and /B instead of strong and /strong for bold. I don't need this leading paragraph flag, for example. And all of these things could save you a small number of characters at least. And so what you'll see here now, if I export this, oh no, it's too big. I'm going to show you this with my microbiome brain thing that I previously reduced the size of here. So I'll take that over here, paste that in. You can see I'm a little bit above the limit, but I don't need this leading P, so I'll delete that. Oops. Save, right at the limit, download the PDF. And then now if you come take a look, you can see I've got my paragraph breaks. I've got the italics for the papers and for the et als, etc. So this looks a lot nicer than that giant mash of a paragraph that I had before. So hopefully this saves you at least a little bit of pain as you're trying to desperately get your biosketch into the new format. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. You can reach me on social media on Blue Sky, or on comments on the video or Substack. Wherever you want to find me is great. Good luck out there, everybody.